We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And very quickly, just before we dig into things, Tom is back. We'll dig into that very soon. Want to say thank you very much to Lee Overstreet for pinch hitting for us last week. And yes, we do have a bevy of questions coming up later, home theater and AV questions to answer. But for right now, welcome back, Tom, and please tell us what the heck happened, because many, many things happened to you.
Right. So I don't know. What did you say last week?
I just said that you were away dealing with Hurricane Idalia, and that was about it, because that was all I knew at the time that we recorded.
Yeah. So I live in a neighborhood that is low-lying and, historically floods,
Right.
for almost any reason whatsoever. My house has never had a flood claim against it in the history of it being here. Once you for those of you that don't know, once you put in a flood claim, it stays forever.
Okay.
Like, you can always look it up.
Okay.
It's not like it's 6 years and it falls off or something
Right.
like that. So this house has never had a flood claim on it. We've gotten water close, but
Yes.
never inside the house. So we sandbagged up and got things off the ground and did all the stuff we were supposed to do, and we left. The big dog went back to the Southeast Guide Dogs, which, because he's a breeder dog and everything, he can stay there, during these things.
Okay.
And it's just easier for us. So we dropped him off there, and the little dog went with us to my brother and sister-in-law's house. And things didn't go well. The little dog was not getting along with their little dogs, and things were kind of like exploding. And I was like, okay, this is not fun. I'm not having a good time.
Indeed.
So the news and everything else kept saying that the storm was moving more west, which was good for us. It just puts us farther away. We were on the wrong side of it. The one side pulls the water away from the shore, and one side pushes the water into shore. And we were on the bad side, which means it pushes the water into shore. Plus, there was scheduled to be what's called a king's tide. It's during a full moon. The moon is very close to the Earth, and the tides are particularly high. This has happened one time before with a tropical storm that went right through our area.
Right.
And we did not flood, but like a quarter of the houses. You remember that from the podcast. If you've been listening long enough, I talked about it. A quarter of the houses in my neighborhood, that's my estimate, not like some real number, flooded and got quite a bit of water in them. So we went from being very concerned to being not very concerned because of what everybody was saying. So we ended up coming home. So we came home and took the sandbags, kind of like removed enough of the sandbags from the garage door, so that the door to the garage, so that we could get into the house. We went in, we went to sleep, did our thing. It was fine. High tide was like at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:45 or something like that. So I set my alarm for 5. Now they said the next high tide, which was at 2 p.m. the next day, which is Wednesday, was going to be the scary one. That was going to be the real bad one. If we got past that, we would be fine.
Okay.
So at 4:45, I got up, I looked. There was no water in the garage, which is good. There was a lot of water on the street, but whatever. So I was like, okay, maybe the storm was starting to pass, and maybe we'll get through this. By 6:30. It was clear we were in trouble.
And I think this is the Tuesday of last week that this was occurring,
that would be the night, because I was preparing Tuesday, right?
Okay.
No. Yeah, I was preparing Tuesday, so it would have been Wednesday morning, 6:30 a.m. So this was after low tide, but not that far after, maybe an hour and a half at low tide. It was clear that things were going poorly. So the water was very, very high, and it was rising. So I went back into the garage. I made sure that the back door was re-secured completely, just the way I had done it before, with sandbags and tarps and everything else. And then I crawled in through a window.
Yeah.
And then, so now the house is secured as it can be from the outside, and we just basically waited.
Yeah.
So by about this was a little bit earlier than 6:30. So by like 6:30, 7 o'clock, we started noticing water in the house.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't a lot, but it wasn't coming in through the doors, which I had secured.
Mm-hmm.
It was coming in through cracks between the walls and the foundation, or something like that. It was just finding its way in.
Yep.
And one of the places was at the corner where the home theater room meets the rest of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So, we started noticing the carpet getting wet in there. One of my kids' bedrooms, we started noticing the carpet getting wet in there. And we're like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Because this is still basically low tide, and 2 p.m. is the high tide, the king's tide that everybody's worried about. This is the biggest tide. And this is the one that we were most concerned about. And so we're watching this. And I basically opened the front window to our house, because in front of that is like a built-in planter. So if our house is a little bit raised up as far as the ground around it, right? Which is why it's a little bit higher than all the other houses around us, which is why we never flood, have never flooded before now. And there's a step up and then a step again up into the house. There's a step onto our porch and the step up into the house. So I'm sitting there watching, basically looking at the bricks, and I'm just watching how high the water's getting, right?
Yeah.
So, it was... I mean, I basically spent like 3 or 4 hours sitting in that windowsill, watching this water. And as the tide was supposed to be coming in, it was coming in, the water was going out faster.
Okay.
So let me tell you something about weathermen. And I don't blame them, because they're certainly doing the best they can with the information that they have. But if I had ever been as wrong as weathermen are in my job at any given time, no one would ever listen to me. No one would ever listen to me. So they, and I wasn't watching the news. Because we don't have, but our next door neighbor was watching the news, and they were waiting to hear from the weathermen that they follow, when they should leave.
Right.
And they were like, oh, it's not going to be that big of a deal. It's not going to be, you guys are going to be fine. You guys are going to be fine. And he's like looking out the window of his house, and the water is coming up the driveway. Right. It's higher than it's ever been. And he's like, it's already too late. They're telling me on the news it's going to be fine. And it's now too late for me to leave. I can't leave. Because there are ways in and out of the neighborhood, but only to a certain extent.
Sure.
And of course, I'm going to tell you, if you own a Jeep,
okay,
I do not like you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry and it's not because of you. It's because of people who own Jeeps.
Okay.
Okay. Because they come to this neighborhood. They're like, oh, it's the neighborhood's flooding. Let's go joyride through these people's neighborhoods and push water into their house.
Yeah.
Now, you may be like, I would never do that. Yeah. You might not, but people who own Jeeps do, and raise trucks too. But it seems to be historically Jeeps, and they run over people's yards and they tear everything up. And it's really, people are sitting there, they're like watching this. They're sitting there watching the water get almost in their house, and it's stopped and it's starting to recede. And then somebody comes by in a Jeep
creates a wave and a wake and
pushes it into the house, and now they've got a flooded house.
Right.
And it's a nightmare to get rid of. So we spent this last week pulling up carpet. There's also been fires in the neighborhood too because of electrical. We could see smoke coming out.
Gas lines too, I guess, potentially, right?
But there's not a ton of gas in here. There is some, but there's not a ton. And but it was mostly, I think, that a Tesla caught on fire.
Okay.
I think that's what they do. But there's also appliances and stuff like that short out and then cause fires in people's houses. But
so upshot, just for it's clear for everybody, water got into Tom's house. That's so. The fact that you're here this week, I wasn't expecting you to be here. To be quite honest,
we got what you might call a puddle of water in one little area, but as soon as it hits the carpet, that's it. It's wicked up and taken everywhere. So we started ripping out carpet a couple of days later because I was like, oh, it'll dry out, it'll be fine. It was not. First of all, that water is not that water is not clean.
No.
In any way, shape, or form.
It was ocean water to begin with, so.
Well, not only that. any fecal matter that's on the ground is now in your house.
It sure is.
We have dogs in the backyard and everything else. Anyways, so we, it was starting to smell worse and worse and worse. So we started ripping out carpet, and we realized that there was more water in more rooms than we thought.
Right.
But it still wasn't like inches of water. And there were people in this neighborhood that got 3 feet of water in their house.
Holy smokes! Wow.
So and I'm just gonna say, I'm watching like everybody lambast the people at Burning Man, all the bunch of riches.
Yep,
bunch of rich people that they're getting what they deserve. They deserve that, and that's what a lot of people say about this neighborhood too. I know that you guys listen to this podcast all the time, and you know how I am as a person as far as how cheap I am, and that's not because I'm rich and I don't like to spend my money. It's because I don't have money to spend, and I need to be. And I live in this neighborhood. How did I get into this rich neighborhood that people are getting what they deserve? Well, the people who are rich that get into this neighborhood, they buy an $800,000 house. I do not. Let's just be clear. I do not have an $800,000 house, but they buy an $800,000 house that's on the water. They bulldoze it and they build a $2 million house on top of it. And those houses are all fine. Because they're built to newer code.
My mind is
Our
boggling.
House was built in the 50s.
My mind is boggling at an $800,000 house being a rich house, just being in Vancouver. Just throwing that out there, but
well, I will say that the house they build on top of it, though, 3 years later they sell it for $6 million.
Okay, so, now you're getting there.
So, but the point here is, it's very easy to just to look at people who are. And then group them all in with a certain, and I just did that with Jeep owners. So the irony does not escape me, nor does the hypocrisy here escape me. But I'm driving through this neighborhood you cannot drive through right now hardly, because there's so many remediation companies. There's people who have their entire lives, like every bit of furniture in their house, 4 or 5 feet of drywall, all their kitchen cabinets.
Does that end up meaning that your claim and restoration and stuff gets pushed way down the priority list?
Not really. Okay. It doesn't, because there's the real shame that's happening in this neighborhood right now is all the vultures that swoop down, and they just absolutely, these different remediation companies, there's like the good ones, and then there's the ones that come in and they just absolutely fleece people and get them to sign checks. There's people who rent in this neighborhood, and the rental companies that they rent from are like national, and they do not care, and they are like, you still have to pay rent. And they're like,
my goodness,
I mean, how am I supposed to pay rent? Like, well, the lease says that you cannot, and this is an actual post from Facebook on my Facebook group. The lease says that you cannot break the lease for any reason. And they're like, well, I don't have any place to live. What am I supposed to do? They're like, you signed the lease and you're screwed. And that's it. I mean, people are absolutely suffering out here.
No kidding.
It's very hard to listen to people make jokes about our neighborhood, just because there's, like I said, multi-million-dollar houses that are right on the water. Across the street, there's $200,000 houses that have 4 feet of water in them.
Yeah.
And it's and those people do not have the money to just be like, oh well, we'll stay at the Four Seasons for the next 6 months. It doesn't matter where it is, or
it's just because even if you were in a neighborhood far enough away that it didn't impact your house, like the fact that all this resources and everything has to go to an area at a given time, like something, your neighborhood could be next, and then what's impacted people prior is going to impact you now. Like, I guess there's no forethought. I guess there's no.
And it's funny to hear people in Florida like, oh, that's what they get for living in the flood zone. Listen to my man. Listen to me. Okay. Florida is a flood zone.
No kidding.
Okay?
Yes.
It is only a matter of time before the entire state floods. This is not going to be a landmass that's going to live here forever. But it is what it is. We are very fortunate. We are not complaining.
Well, yeah, we got to say, like, all things considered, the situation at Tom's house could have been
minor.
worse. Like within your eye line, you see
First of
people in a
all,
worse situation. So grateful for
they are
that
next door to
much,
me.
but yeah,
they are across the street from me. A lady directly across the street, she didn't get any water in her house.
Okay.
Our house got a little bit of water.
Right.
The house next to us, there was like most of their bedrooms got an inch or inch and a half of water in it, and the house next to that completely flooded out.
Yeah.
So we're talking, I can't drive through this neighborhood and not see somebody who's just, there's dumpsters and dumpsters and dumpsters full of garbage. There's like a little park nearby, and they put 6 like trailer-sized dumpsters that like a truck, like a flatbed truck will come and pick up. They put 6 of them in there. A single house could fill one of those
instantly
up easily
full.
right
instantly,
now.
Yes.
So we are very fortunate. We're not complaining. Like, not only did we not have it that bad, but I'm also young and fit, right? So when we talked to it, because while the water was coming in, we were calling our insurance agents and being like, okay, well, what do we do? And they were like, tear out the carpet.
Yeah.
Tear out the carpet. So I just grabbed like a box cutter, a razor, and sliced up the carpet until I got done with the water, and I had sons to help me bring it out. My wife yesterday because it was Labor Day, and she was home and I was at work, and she took one of my sons over to an elderly lady's house, just 2 blocks away, maybe less, and helped her drag out. I helped her, did it for her, drag out a bunch of furniture that she just couldn't do.
Right.
And there's a lot of people in this neighborhood that have been living here for 30 years. Yeah. They inherited these houses from their parents. And, and then we've got to listen to they got it coming. That's what those people get.
I don't know who's actually saying that. Not that I 100% believe you. I know I've seen comments like that, but it's just...
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Well...
So anyways, we are very fortunate. So currently in my home theater, if you're wondering what happened in the home theater...
I honestly don't understand why you're here, but not that I'm not grateful for you to be here.
What else am I going to do, Rob? I can't... my life doesn't stop. I still have to go to work. I still have stuff to do, so I still have to write. Luckily Andrew has promised to, put out a little bit of extra content for AV Gadgets, because I am not only am I physically very busy, but I'm also emotionally having
that's what
a
I
hard
mean.
time.
If you want to take a break, we are all more than supportive of it. But
so the home theater got, like I said, basically think of it as like if you went into your home theater and you dumped like a couple of gallons of water on the ground, right? Yeah. So it didn't really get up to the level of, hey, there's water, I can see a line of water in here. It just soaked into the carpet sort of thing. So any wires that were on the ground, of course, were touched by this. One of my subwoofers, which is on the SoundPath isolation feet thing, so I'm not worried about it, was touching it. All the speaker stands were touching it, but the carpet is basically ripped out from, there's no carpet in here.
Yeah.
And one like 2 by 4 inch thick panel, which was on the ground, sort of leaned against the wall, and 4 GIC tri-traps got soaked. So if it's louder in here. I know it's louder in here. I can hear it. But if I sound a little bit more echoey, that's why. But
I wasn't noticing that on my
if I don't sound that much different, it's because I got a buttload of acoustic treatments in this place anyway. So all the stuff that was on the walls is fine. But it's the biggest hassle right now is the garage, because the garage got completely flooded. We were really not expecting that. And then we have a refrigerator out there, and that of course died, and then all the food in it spoiled, and because we didn't realize it was working at first, and then it stopped, and we didn't go in there for a couple of days.
Remarkable how little water in the grand scheme of things, how little an amount it takes to utterly ruin a huge amount of stuff.
Well, you went through a water leak and stuff like that, so
it took 10 months to go through my stupid little claim, which was one burst drain pipe. So,
So I will tell you that one thing that COVID did for me, COVID did a lot of things for me, some of them good, some of them bad. One of the good things it did is that I decided that I was no longer going to be cynical about certain things. And people, it's called AVRant, not because I was such an uplifting kind of guy, but one of the things that I kind of decided was like, hey, you know what? I need to start being a little bit more, empathetic towards other people and what's going on. Like I have, as far as, driving and stuff like that, I used to be kind of road raging, not as far as like how I drove, but like I would get mad at other drivers.
Sure.
I would be very impatient with other drivers. And during COVID, I was like, all right, this is not making your life any better.
It does not.
You are not, the end result is not you feeling better about things. It's making you feel worse.
Yep.
So
even if it's purely self-serving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that has caused me to, like, in situations like this, to just sort of let go of a lot of that sort of anger and everything else. And even me complaining about people with Jeeps, I don't drive by people in Jeeps and be like, flip them off and yell at them and stuff like that. I'm just like, man, it is really a shame that people do that in our neighborhood. That's so unthoughtful. And it happens every time it floods here.
It's just flat out cruel doing that.
It's not. I've had people go down my street in a big lifted truck, pulling somebody on a wakeboard.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, I mean, what are you doing? Like, I know that probably looks gross. Good on
like the water
Facebook.
that you're wakeboarding in, disgusting. So
I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, but we are fine.
Okay,
my wife is very stressed out. I will tell you
kidding.
That. She is very,
but
very
it wasn't like
out.
Quite bad enough that you literally have to move out of your house right now. You're able to live in your house, which is something given the situation.
So we are starting this podcast. It's later, in the midst of the episode, but we started the podcast an hour early. That's because the insurance adjuster is coming today, one of them, and he's the flood guy. That's the big one that we need to talk to because we have very little house damage.
Yeah.
So wind and other types of damage. The homeowner's insurance is like, you don't have enough to meet your deductibles. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
like, that's fine. But the flood insurance guy is coming. So I think it's the guy. And it doesn't matter. Anyways, the flood insurance person is coming, and they they said they were coming in the afternoon.
Okay,
so we were trying to get this done before the afternoon.
Yes. And
if my wife opens that door right there and doesn't hand me a cup of coffee, which I don't think she will, if she does open that door, it means he's here, and I need to go.
Yeah. Well, we'll get through whatever we can, and everyone is very much understanding.
Yeah. So yes. Let's talk about what we watched.
Let's start. Yeah.
Believe it or not, one of the first things I did, and the first things I did is hook the home theater back up. Because I was like, you know what? I'm not living with a home theater. It's just not happening. I mean, I'm gonna have to because I have to unhook all this stuff from them to put carpet back in here. But boy, is that going to be a pain. Yeah. All right, what did you watch, Rob?
Okay, well, I'll say I continued on watching Star Wars Rebels. I know I told you, Tom, the last time that we texted before that I was just going to jump right into Ahsoka, but I decided, whatever. By the time Ahsoka has fully aired, I'll have had time to watch Rebels, so that's what I decided.
How many seasons are there?
4. How
many episodes per season?
15, 22, 22, 15 is how the 4 seasons went. I know, it's quite a bit. But they do go by quick because they're 20-minute episodes. So I'm halfway through the second season now. I finished all of the first season last week and halfway through the second season now. So yeah, I'm absolutely enjoying this show. I wouldn't say like every moment of it is critical viewing. It definitely could have been tightened up and shortened up here and there. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of the animation style overall, but it is quite clearly, just like Clone Wars did, it's getting better as the seasons progress. So as the crew on the animation front there is getting used to things and speeding up, it is looking better and better as it goes along. So yeah, enjoying that show. Looks like Tom had something to say there.
Yeah, I want to watch it. I'm watching Ahsoka.
Yeah.
I do want to watch it. It's funny to me to watch Ahsoka and not be at least slightly in the know.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like, this is what it feels like to be the rest of the world watching a Marvel movie. Because you see him pan across like a bunch of crap on the table. I'm like, there's like Easter eggs all over this crap, and I don't know what any of this stuff means. And I'm certainly enjoying this Ahsoka well enough. Are you watching at the same time, or you're not?
I checked out the first episode, which, I mean, basically most of the characters from Rebels are showing up there in that first episode of Ahsoka, so I was glad to have watched the first season before I even watched that first episode, but I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna, because I mean, where Rebels ends, like, mentioned last week, I already know some spoilers. So where Rebels ends very much ties into where Ahsoka begins. I'm just going to commit to going ahead and finishing that show. Because like I say, by the time I'm done with all 4 seasons, then most of Ahsoka should have already aired.
I will go back and watch it. I will at some point.
There's got to be a guide on somewhere that is just like, here are the essential episodes, because you don't need to watch every single last episode. But if you haven't watched them before, how would you know which ones are the important ones? So
right. All right. So what else did you watch?
Yeah. So the other thing, I watched a movie. I watched Renfield. That is the Nicolas Cage as Dracula movie with Nicholas Hoult playing Renfield, his servant. Set in modern times. So in this version, Dracula has managed to survive all the way until the modern day, largely thanks to Renfield's efforts. So I very much enjoyed the opening of this movie, where they basically recreated many of the classic black and white Dracula scenes, but with Nicolas Cage playing Dracula in those. It was well done. It was a lot of fun. And yes, Nicolas Cage was very much being full Nicolas Cage in this movie, which was absolutely entertaining. He made for a fabulous Dracula. I have no problems with that whatsoever. The only downside to this is I didn't love Awkwafina's character being so stoic. Like, her character is supposed to be brave, but she never shows even the slightest instance of fear whatsoever, which doesn't make her brave. It just makes her blank. and I don't know if that was like, I don't see how it could be purely the directing, because you had Nicholas Hoult being very emotional and you had freaking Nicolas Cage going full on Nicolas Cage. So it wasn't like there was a director telling everybody to dial things back.
Well, they could have been telling her to dial things back, because we need somebody not to be crazy. Yeah, we need a contrast.
I did think of that, but it just for me, the performance just came across as very, very blank, which it didn't.
I like her too, so there's no reason to think that she couldn't have done whatever you want her to do.
Yeah. So it wasn't my favorite part of the movie. That's all I'm going to say there. But yeah, other than that, a very entertaining movie. It's short. It's outlandishly violent, like meant to be comical cartoon violence. So like, you know how like crazy some parts of like Kill Bill went, right? So same idea, like just things just absolutely gushing all over the place or exploding when it makes no sense. But I mean, it's all meant to be so over the top as to be comical, and it achieves that very much. So yeah, if you're into that type of comedy and over the top gore, then you will very much enjoy Renfield, and I did.
Okay. I watched Loki season 1, rewatched it. Yeah. Again, I think these things are better on the second watch than they are on the first.
Yeah.
And I did not realize that Loki season 2 was coming out pretty soon, so it's kind of like worked out for me.
Yeah, good refresher.
And it's so interesting the contrast they've been doing with these different styles as far as Moon Knight and Loki and WandaVision. It's I think, to me, I don't want to say brave. I don't think that's the right word, but it's, they could have just gone with the, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is basically just shot like a regular Marvel movie, as far as the color schemes and everything else. But they didn't. They went someplace different with it, which I liked. I need to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier do it again as well.
Yeah, I think that would probably be better.
Looking forward to season 2.
Yeah.
I started watching the Wheel of Time season 2, which I forgot I had done, which should tell you a little bit about how.
Okay. That's Amazon Prime?
It is Amazon Prime. And I cannot. They did a season recap. There's usually season recaps, for like the last season, remind you what happened. I have never seen such a terrible season recap, because I watched that seseason recap and went, I don't remember any of this.
That didn't help?
Like, that didn't help me at all. Like, I don't remember any of this. And I may have fallen asleep during the last episode or something like that and missed parts or something. I don't know. But I will tell you, I got to the end of, I think, episode 2, and what I realized about this show that I do really like, and I like quite a few of the characters or the actors or their portrayals or however you want to say it. I do like quite a few, especially the dude who's clearly going to turn into a wolf or has some wolf things going on. I never read the books, so I don't know who the characters, what their names are. I don't like the wizard lady. I don't think you're supposed to, so kudos, I think.
All right.
I think she's supposed to be kind of unlikable, but one of the things I realized is the costumes and the attention to detail that you see in some of these scenes is pretty amazing.
Okay.
And I was pretty impressed with it. They're clearly spending somebody's either spending money or is very thrifty, because it comes out pretty good, and the special effects are all good enough that I don't feel like I'm being taken out of anything.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people hate it because it doesn't go with the books, but I understand the books are kind of ridiculously complex.
This is an adaptation, not a retelling. Yeah,
I don't really know. And lastly, like I said, I did start watching Ahsoka, and as far as, again, you see an actor, like you talked about Awkwafina a second ago. Mm-hmm. You see an actor what's her name that plays Ahsoka?
Rosario Dawson.
That's it, Rosario Dawson. Mm-hmm. She is amazing. I've seen her in a ton of stuff, and I've loved her in everything. I do not love her as Ahsoka.
Oh, okay.
And it's again, it's almost like what you said about Awkwafina. It's like she's a little too stoic.
Okay.
Like when she does the action stuff, I'm like, I am down for it. When she's talking, it's almost like, I want you to kind of just speed up a little bit. Like, I feel like you're a little too laid back about this whole thing. And the one thing I did not like about one of the seasons, and I know it comes straight from the stupid cartoon, is that she had like a space suit that conformed to her hair.
Well, yeah.
Which I'm like, it should have just been a big dome, but
that might look equally goofy, honestly.
It looks so dumb, but
that would be a very big dome too, so I can see why they didn't go that way.
I don't think they had much
it's tough.
To do with I mean, I almost want her to like have a normal head thing, and then she takes it off and shakes her head and it goes poof like that.
I mean, they do have force fields in the Star Wars universe, so could it just be a force field her head?
I don't know, but I was like, she came out with that thing. I was like, that came straight from that cartoon.
Sure,
it came straight from that cartoon, and I think they did as best they could with it. Right. It looks like fabric or whatever. It looks like it could have worked, but it looks dumb.
Okay,
but I am enjoying the series, but I think I would enjoy it more if I knew who the heck all these people were.
There you go. That's why I decided to go ahead with Rebels. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about this podcast.
Let's finally start the podcast.
AVRant, a podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to the website, find our older episodes, along with our show notes for our current episode, which will have a link to a Flickr album that you can use to follow along with the pictures we're talking about. We will also be available on Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant, where you can see our recording sessions. My video will not look that much different because most of the damage was all on the floor.
Okay.
But, so it'll just look the same.
Mm-hmm.
Not that anybody was looking at the video anyways. You contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His handle on other social media is @FirstReflect. I am Tom at avrant.com, and I am not on other social media because I have given up.
Okay.
Given up caring. We're going to thank our listeners of the week. Become a listener of the week. Support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending us a PayPal donation. We want to thank Nelson for doing that this week. Thank you very much, Nelson.
Yeah, Nelson, thank you for the PayPal donation. We appreciate your financial support.
If you want to sign up to be a monthly contributor to our podcast, you can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, where you can sign up to be our patron. We have 131 patrons, including Dale. So thank you very much to all of our patrons.
That's right. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up or re-sign up, since some people's credit card numbers flipped over and expired now that we're into the month of September. But thank you very much to 131 patrons still hanging around. And Dale, thank you for being one of them.
We also got notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through. I'm going to talk about hurricanes this week.
That's right.
But there was also fires and wars. And are you guys still on fire, or is that?
Oh, we still have fires going. It's not too bad in the Lower Mainland. Doing okay. Temperatures have cooled down and all that, but there are definitely still fires raging throughout British Columbia.
Yeah. So the world's crumbling around us.
Has not been a great season.
From Dazz, Dale. Dale says he's learned so much from us and enjoys the podcast every week. He's a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club and really appreciates our efforts and the time we put in. We got thanks from Eddie. We got from Frank from Germany. Greg, who says we ought to get a tax credit for our public service, in his opinion. David, who says thanks for bringing him back from the brink of audiophile insanity 9 years ago. And Paul. So that's Dazz, Dale, Eddie, Frank, Greg, David, and Paul. Thank you for thanking us.
Yes, I'll say the names one more time. Dazz, Dale, Eddie, Frank, Greg, David, and Paul. Thank you all very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They are definitely appreciated these days. And a big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
In the news this week, there's a lot. There's even more than we're going to talk about here, but there's a lot.
Somewhat limited it, yeah.
Yeah. The Dolby Vision projectors will be all the rage at CEDIA and IFA this year, including the first long-throw Dolby Vision projector, which is something we thought might never happen.
We did.
Without some sort of sensor on it.
Said things to that effect, but we are being proven wrong this year.
We're being proven wrong, and instead of saying, we never said that, and then deleting the old episodes, we're going to just go...
I ain't looking back to see where we said that.
I know, like I'm going to be able to find that. Listen, I got to deal with a lot of carpet-related issues right now, okay? And throwing out a lot. I've got dumpsters with the crap in my garage I got to get rid of. Hey, for those of you that are concerned about my bike, it was hanging from the ceiling.
Okay. Bike is okay.
Oh, my God. I think my wife is irritated with me for still cycling. I didn't cycle so this was all happening on Wednesday, and I didn't cycle again until Saturday. I could have gone Friday. I got up to go on Friday, but there was like a 10% chance of rain. I was like, screw you, I'm not going out.
Nuts to that.
All right. Dolby Vision projectors. First up, AWOL, AWOL. I don't know why they would use that acronym, but here we are. AWOL Vision's LTV 3500 Pro is an ultra short throw projector using a triple laser light engine to achieve 107% of the Rec 2020 color gamut with 3500 lumen output. They say it's suitable for up to 150-inch screen, which is much bigger than most ultra throw projectors. And it will have Dolby Vision on board. Its MSRP is $5,500. That seems like it probably won't work that well for that money. Be honest with you.
Well, I mean, it's other than it being Dolby Vision certified. I mean, we had some that were kind of questionably Dolby Vision supporting a year and a half ago. This one is fully supporting it. The Dolby is making statements themselves. They are right on board with this. That's so that triple laser.
I bet it's not 150 inches though.
Well, I mean, 3,500 lumens. If your room isn't that terribly bright, you could absolutely do that with one of the ultra short throw ambient light rejecting screens. So this triple laser light engine, it's the same one that we've seen in the Samsung and in the 4 movie theater, and it seems to be sort of like a thing that one of the Chinese OEMs has come up with, this triple laser light engine that multiple are using. This is using the smaller 0.47 inch DLP chip that is being wobbled 4 times per frame to make the 4K resolution. So there's nothing here that's like particularly new, but the full-on Dolby Vision support that is official, and that's a new thing. And we'll be seeing that at CEDIA or IFA.
That's good, I guess. And potentially more exciting is the XGIMI.
I don't know how to pronounce this name.
I don't know.
I think it's GIMI, but yeah.
I did review one of these projectors, and it was very nice. Potentially, the XGIMI Horizon Ultra, thanks to Jay for the link. It's the first... I could have sent you this link. They sent it to me. Okay. But I just ignored it because I was busy. It's the first long-throw projector with official Dolby Vision support. The price is just $1,700.
Yeah.
That seems very cheap. It uses a hybrid laser plus LED light engine to deliver 2,300 lumens and 95% of DCI P3 color gamut. The cube-shaped projector will also let you enter your screen size and gain so Dolby Vision can be processed optimally for your setup. I think that is very important.
Yes. Now that also makes me wonder if JVC might end up having an announcement of a new firmware update that's adding Dolby Vision to their JVC laser projectors, because they've already had their theater optimizer putting in your screen size and gain, and in fact even material out of their database, because that's for their own dynamic frame-by-frame tone mapping for regular HDR10, and those JVC projectors already support HDR10+. So I'm like, do we really think it's out of the realm of possibility that they'd work with Dolby to add Dolby Vision to their projectors? It seems like everything necessary is already present in those, just bar a firmware update to add that picture mode. But going back to the ones that are officially known about, whether it's XGIMI or GIMI or however that brand name is pronounced, this Horizon Ultra model that they're putting out, they're $1,700, impressive price. This is, again, one of the 0.47 inch DLP chips being wobbled 4 times per frame to make that. It does top top out at 4K 60. It does not support 4K 120, so it's HDMI 2.0, not HDMI 2.1. But yeah, that hybrid of LED and laser light engine brings the price down a bit. It also means it isn't reaching full Rec 2020, but it's getting 95% of DCI-P3, so still pretty darn good. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this thing actually performs. You're not going to find like a very fancy motorized lens with a bunch of vertical and horizontal lens shift on this type of model. It does have a zoom lens, but other than that, it's sort of a fixed position lens on there. So that's another way that they're bringing the price down a bit.
Yeah. Epson's got announced a new ultra short throw projector. They haven't announced.
There is another one.
On
Yeah.
I wonder if they are doing HLG and HDR10. I know for sure. But I wonder if they might do the same thing that you're talking about here. All right. From Karl, THX is teaming up with Pixelgen to launch 2 series of ultra-high-speed certified HDMI cables. They say their goal is to provide the smallest diameter cable possible to ensure maximum flexibility while maintaining the most reliable signal delivery with a total HDMI 2.1B protocol functionality. Let me tell you what that B means. Nothing.
There was I think it had to do with like a computer thing that was I think that was
nothing for you.
I think that was the where you have different windows where like one window's running at 4K 60 and another window is running at 4K 120 and it allowed that to all work over HDMI. I think that's what the B at the end of HDMI 2.1. But the reason that I felt this was somewhat newsworthy is, I mean, okay, THX, we haven't seen THX certified cables in a while, but it's just that the being fully on board with making sure that every part of the HDMI 2.1B spec is fully certified is not something you can necessarily count on, even from something that has the hologram and says ultra high speed. It's like, yeah, making sure that it genuinely supports everything that spec can support, and THX and Pixelgen are like, if it's in the spec, these cables are going to support it absolutely, and the prices aren't outlandish, so I don't mind them doing this.
Yeah, so the short range series is all copper and available in 6 lengths from a half a meter to up to 5 meters. Prices start at $40 and go up to $185. Again, you know, what you're paying for here is like a peace of mind,
right?
To a certain extent, and THX is putting their name on it, which means that they want to make sure that it'll all work properly.
But I did want to mention, don't just take those links and like divide the price difference, because it's basically for going up, like for every half a meter that you add for the first few sizes, it's like $5 extra for every half meter, and then there's like a big jump to that 5 meter one. So the $185 versus $40, it's not that they just like evenly divided that amongst the links or anything. So I've got the prices showing on screen right now, or you can see them via the images over at Flickr if you're going through the album, or you can just look up the link that we'll have in the show notes.
Yeah, the long reach series uses a hybrid of copper and Pixelgen's plexiglass. I don't know whether
Pixelglass without the vowels. Yeah,
whatever. Fiber optic cable to offer 3 lengths, 7.6 meters for $300, 10 meters for $350, and 15 meters for $400. These cables are directional with a dedicated source end and display end. All are available for pre-order on Pixelgen's website. Like I said, I don't mind this so much.
That's right.
I think that, you know, yes, you can. There's always going to be somebody who's going to say, "Oh yeah, you could buy this one from this random company that is only available on Amazon and will be gone in a month." That also has certified label on it and everything else. And provided that certified label isn't counterfeit, which I'm going to say it probably isn't, then you're probably going to be fine. And yes, you could save some money.
Yeah.
But there are people out there who it is not worth the bandwidth of their brain to try to value shop to save $40 or $100. You know, to them, it's like, I know that if I buy this, I recognize that name. I know they're associated with quality, and that price doesn't seem outlandish to me. I think that there needs to be products like that. What they don't need to be is products like, you know, Beats headphones, which have a cachet, which people think,
I mean, to be fair, Beats has gotten better since being owned by Apple and kicking out everybody who was involved in the formation of Beats originally.
Right. But initially, you know, I was just watching an older episode of some TV show, and everybody was wearing Beats headphones.
They sure were.
I'm like, oh my god.
I mean, hey, you got to give them credit for the marketing, because they
did.
were a slam dunk on that front.
So that's, I don't mind this as long as it's associated with quality and the prices aren't outlandish. And I don't think the prices are outlandish. All right, Denon released their X1800H receiver, 1800H, to replace the 1700H. The price goes up from $700 to $750, but all that 1800H does is remove features.
Yeah.
Which is true. We wrote about this on AV Gadgets. I think Andrew did it. I did it. I don't remember.
The link I'm linking to is AV Gadgets' link, so yes.
Just like the recent S-series receiver models that came out, there are no more analog video connections of any kind, but the 1800H also loses the Zone 2 pre-outs because, honestly...
I'm surprised at that. For the X-series, like, that used to be kind of the delineation between the S-series and the X-series. Is the X-series, you would have the Zone 2 pre-outs, so I'm a little surprised at that, I gotta be honest. Does that really... You're really $50 extra and you couldn't just keep those? Seems weird.
Still has 3 HDMI 2.1 inputs and 3 HDMI 2.0 inputs. So 6 total. Only 3 of them are 2.1.
Yeah.
The Audyssey Multi-Q XT on board might be a good time to snag a 1700H on clearance. Is a maximum of 7 channels. A maximum of 7 channels is all you need. So I think in that article that we actually linked to the Amazon listing, and it's like, so it's $750 for this brand new. The older one, the 1700, I think at the time was like $589 or maybe even less than that. So you can save quite a bit of money. You get more features.
You actually get
everything
more,
else is exactly the same.
A little bit weird, yeah.
I also wrote up on AV Gadgets. Marantz is running a 70 days for 70 years trade-in program. They're working in partnership with retailers until November 10th. It started on the 1st of September for those of you that are doing the counting. You can look for the trade-in symbol on their retailer page to find locations that will accept any brand. Okay, any brand, not just Marantz, in any condition, they say, for a maximum up to 20% discount on the purchase of a new Marantz product. There's a list of them. Okay. So, but they do say any used audio equipment is eligible, but they specifically mention receivers and amps.
And they do mention
on
turntables.
the website.
They specifically have a mention of turntables in their copy.
Press release.
Yes.
In the press release does say turntables and other equipment.
Sure.
But they don't really specify. On the website, it's just amps and receivers. Okay. On the press release, they do mention the turntables and other stuff, but it doesn't really say. But the retailer will assess the trade-in value themselves. I don't know what that means. I don't know if they got any training. I don't know if they're just going to be like, here's 20% off. We don't care. Because there's no world in which Marantz is taking these old products and doing something with them other than recycling them.
Yeah.
So all there, it's just, if it were me, I would look in my area, see how many of these places I had, and I would be planning on visiting more than one of them.
Okay.
You have to take the product in because I think that you're going to get, I feel like you could probably end up with that 20% off no matter what you bring in. You just have to get to the right person who's just like, yeah, I don't care. I'll give you 20% off. And that's the end of that. So, yeah.
Okie doke.
Comments from our listener. Dazz wanted to share some updates. Construction has begun on their several house renovation projects. They don't have several houses. They have several projects.
Several projects within one house. Yes, correct.
The top priority was closing in the loft to make a dedicated bedroom, so that wall is already up. They'll see what's left of their budget after upstairs is done and consider widening the basement theater if funds allow. Dazz and Drea haven't been out to the movies in a while, but they celebrated their 6th anniversary, so they went out to catch up on a couple of flicks they had missed. Dazz is somewhat into motorsports, especially endurance racing, and they live less than an hour from Road Atlanta, which I guess is a race course.
It's a famous race course, yes. If you've ever played any of the Forza games or the Gran Turismo games, you have definitely virtually raced at Road Atlanta.
I have not played any of those games. They checked out Gran Turismo, which is I thought it was based on the video game. Is it not based on the video game?
It's based on the real life events where Sony partnered up with Nissan and they took some of the best Gran Turismo video game players and actually put them in real cars, and one of the guys became a professional race car driver. So it's that real story.
All right. Anyways, they really enjoyed it. Dazz was familiar with the real-life story, unlike me, and he felt like the movie was a bit of a throwback to just telling a good story rather than trying to manufacture a blockbuster. Then they saw Oppenheimer, which got a meh from them. They didn't think the aspect ratio changes were in service of the story in any way, nor were the few scenes of nudity that just felt forced and out of place. The final hour dragged, and they were eager to leave by the end. Probably should have seen Barbie instead. I'm still very excited about seeing Barbie, and I'll be honest with you.
It's coming
There's
out.
not a lot that makes me want to see Oppenheimer.
Barbie's coming out at home soon, and I agree. If that's the way you felt about Oppenheimer, you definitely would have had more fun seeing Barbie. But that's another weekend you can go.
From Joe, he says CDA is approaching, and Joe took note of a product tease sent out by Juke Audio, Juke. Mm-hmm. They will be premiering their Juke Plus, 6-zone multi-room amplifier with 100 watts per channel times 12, and independent EQ for each zone. But that isn't the interesting part. Juke Audio says their Juke Plus will have an independent AirPlay 2 and independent Spotify connection for every zone. And since the back panel only includes a single RCA input and a single optical input to be shared across all 6 zones, the independent wireless connections are definitely the main focus. So this is a whole house audio thing, and they're just like, you know what, everybody wants to stream anyways, which is totally true.
Yeah, I don't think they're wrong about going this route. I think they have picked a good idea, and the idea that everybody can have their phone and they can stream to their zone, or of course within the app for the Juke Plus,
have they talked about that?
I don't know what the price is, but you can group together zones or you can play things independently. But it's just the idea that before, these things had a single AirPlay 2 source to be shared amongst all the zones. You couldn't do independent per room. Now they're like, instead of having independent RCA inputs for every zone, we're going to give you one of those, and we're going to give you independent AirPlay 2 and Spotify connections for every room if you want it. So I think they're on the right path.
All right. Joe also noted that CDO will be releasing a new Immersive Audio Design Recommended Practices document dubbed RP22 that aims to quantify system performance metrics to hold integrators accountable and give manufacturers and customers clear targets. Anyone can sign up to receive access to the document at the link we'll have provided on our website there. So,
I signed up to get it. I'll be interested to see what they have to say.
Yeah. And I'll also be very surprised and shocked when nobody in the manufacturing industry pays one bit of attention to it. Greg wanted to weigh in on Nick's recent apprehension about getting a 98-inch TCL R754 for $4,000 rather than a projection setup or one of the more expensive 97 or 98-inch TV options. Greg has owned the R754 for about 10 months now. We played a part in him deciding to give it a try. It cost $5,000 at the time. He also owns a few different sizes of LG OLED TVs, and he replaced an Epson projector setup with the 98-inch TCL. He agrees with what we've said. No, the TCL is not quite as good as an OLED, but without an OLED right next to it for a side-by-side comparison, he's confident just about anybody would think the R754 is the best TV they've ever seen. It is clearly better at HDR than the projector, and for SDR content during the day, it can get brighter overall than its OLEDs. So the combination of all that with its size and price makes it tough to beat. Compared to the even brighter, more expensive 98-inch LCD option, he also agrees with Rob's take that the 754 actually does the best job of limiting the visible blooming and striking a very nice balance overall. He will say that making fine adjustments to the picture settings is a bit more fussy than on his LG OLEDs, but you don't have to go through that once, so whatever. At least from one owner who has tried most of the alternatives, he is happy with this 98-inch R754, and even though it isn't the most expensive option, it's actually the most pleasing in overall image quality. So there you go.
There you go, right from an owner's lips, and you can take that for what it's worth. But if that helps you feel more confident about going, hey, this isn't the most expensive one, how could it actually be perhaps the most pleasing? Well, there you go.
There you go. That's what he says. All right, questions from our listeners. Lior is using an NVIDIA Shield to play his streaming services. It is plugged into his Denon X1800H receiver, which is feeding a 1080p projector. He has a Shield set to output 1080p 24 by default. When he's watching Disney Plus, the audio is limited to 5.1. He can't get Atmos. Is that because he doesn't have his Shield set to output 4K and HDR? Is that the end of the question, or should I keep reading?
Well, I mean, we can't just say that because the answer is yes. It is because your Shield is not set to output 4K. Many of the services, for whatever reason, this is not a technical requirement on the part of Dolby saying that in order to get Dolby Atmos, it has to be a 4K signal. That is absolutely not a truth, but
that is why I downgraded my Netflix, because I got it for Atmos, and then I could never get Atmos because I don't have a 4K.
You don't have a 4K display. So unfortunately, many of the services are this way. If you aren't outputting 4K, you don't necessarily have to be outputting HDR, but you do need to be outputting 4K resolution from the streaming service in order for Atmos to work. I don't know why they've tied those two things together, but it definitely is the case, and Disney Plus is that way on the Shield.
Yeah. When he plays his disc backups via Plex, Atmos, and Atmos and DTS-X work fine. So the problem doesn't seem to be on the hardware side or a cabling issue or anything. Has Disney Plus simply limited Atmos output, so it only works with 4K? We just answered that. And if so, is there some way to trick his system so that it works? Could it be as simple as setting his Shield to output 4K, then have his Denon downscale that to 1080p? I don't know if that'll work. I don't think that'll work. So,
I looked up his AV receiver model, and no, you cannot downscale so whatever signal you are inputting into your Denon receiver, it can upscale it, but it cannot downscale it. So you can't have your Shield outputting 4K into your Denon and have the Denon downscale that to 1080p. It will not support doing that. So basically, there is potentially a workaround using an HD Fury device. There are people who have had success doing it with the HD Fury linker, which is $180, but it should be noted that the linker, and HD Fury has put this as a warning right on the product page now, because obviously they've run into people asking them about this issue, and with the HD Fury linker, it does not work with the Dolby Matte format, the metadata enhanced audio transmission, which basically is a uncompressed PCM signal with metadata on top of it to give you Atmos, which is the way an Apple TV 4K outputs Dolby Atmos, and there are some other devices that do it too. Now, specifically with the NVIDIA Shield from the streaming services, it should be able to output the Dolby Digital Plus bitstream with the Atmos extension on it. It technically should work with the HD Fury linker, but for my peace of mind in giving a recommendation, I would more likely recommend, it costs more money, but the HD Fury Arcana, which is $250, so it is $70 more, but that one is basically all about getting audio to work in situations where the video and the audio signal don't want to match. That's what the Arcana is all about. The Arcana also will generate an eARC output even if you don't have an eARC output from your signal. So for example, if you're connecting it to a Sonos soundbar that only has an eARC input, that's the only way to get Atmos into a Sonos soundbar, well, the Arcana can do that. So as a more generalized, this is pretty much going to work for anybody's situation, I'm more confident recommending the Arcana for $250. But if you really want to save the money, the Shield should work with the linker because it shouldn't be using the Dolby Matte format. But if you give it a try and it doesn't work, maybe you spend $70 more and get the Arcana.
Yeah.
It's still kind of a lot of money either way just to get this going.
Or you could just downgrade your Netflix and just have 5.1 and then use an up converter.
Use an up mixer.
Up mixer to give you the
That's
Atmos,
right.
Which is what I do. Or you can use an Xbox and have everything come out as Atmos no matter what you do, and have it suck. Eddie wants to know, what do we make of the IsoTek V5 power protection and cleaning products? Unless it's a Roomba. I don't know. He saw a demo making all sorts of claims about how it would improve your audio system, but he wasn't sure what to make of it. It's just a bunch of snake oil. Without looking at it, it is in fact snake oil.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah. So, okay, let's just talk about power protection and power cleaning in general. If the question you have is, will this make a difference in my system? The answer is invariably no. Because the question that you would be asking if it would make a difference is, there's some weird buzzing stuff happening and the power chain. Well, I get these whenever my AC kicks on or somebody plugs in the vacuum cleaner. Right. I get static through my system. Yeah. What can I do to fix that? Yeah. That is the question that would indicate that a power cleaner, a voltage regulator and all that stuff would actually make an audible difference. Mm-hmm. What you need a power conditioner for, or all of that stuff, is because it came with a product that you actually wanted. Okay, so you get a battery backup because you want to have a battery backup. That is how you ended up with a power conditioner.
Yeah,
because you didn't really need to buy one. If you're asking the question, will I be able to hear a difference? So,
but yeah, so I mean, things start poorly as soon as you go to IsoTek's website, because the very first thing you're greeted with is a terrible analogy where they show a glass of dirty water with a straw in it and say, if electricity was water, this is what you would use, and then they clean it, make it nice, clear, crystal clean water, which is just not how electricity works. You really can't make that analogy that what you're using is dirty water that you might be drinking. Man, we're going to clean it. But anyway, I mean, on to the V5 products. I mean, basically, as you go along, if you're just looking at the product listings, because there's a whole bunch, and more or less as you're going up and up in the lineup of the V5 products, it's just adding more outlets. And like the first one starts with just 2 outlets that can do a maximum of 10 amps, and then you get into ones that have more 10 amplifier or 10 ampere outlets, and then some that have, for whatever reason, 16 amps instead of 15. I don't know why they're doing that. And then some of the other outlets are only 6 amps going through. There's a weird eclectic mix that's going on. But anyway, they get more and more expensive as you're going up the lineup, and generally just more and more outlets that are on there. If you go to some of their retailers, you can see some of the prices because it's not just listed on their website. So I mean, right down at the bottom, when it's the 10 ampere 2 outlets, that's $760. That's where we're starting with these things, and then they're obviously going up into the thousands of dollars for a power conditioner. That's the sort of price points that we're looking at in here. But the basically the copy on the website, it just gets worse and worse. As you go along, it's just filled with buzzwords. Like when it first starts, some of this stuff is this is where I say it's very nearly completely snake oil, because the idea of, okay, we're going to filter out radio frequency interference. We're going to filter out electromagnetic interference, which they never actually call electromagnetic interference. They want to put their, a common and differential mode interference. I mean, yeah, electromagnetic interference, EMI, just like everybody else, but they got to put their own name on it. And then, why is it 16 amps instead of 15 amps and that type of stuff? And, but, there's some stuff on here that's fine, right? Like 81,000 amps of instantaneous protection, that isn't how you rate protection. So I don't know really what they're doing in a lot of this stuff. But then as the copy goes on, it's just filled with buzzwords. I liked one sentence in particular where they're like, unique, critical, bespoke components have better overall tolerances with improved inductance and current handling.
Inductance?
Yes. The new circuit offers twice the inductance with 40% increase in current leading, current leading to more open sound staging, microdynamics, and detail with more immediate timing.
What?
Completely meaningless. It's an utterly meaningless sentence, and it just goes on from there. They talk about like the products themselves having star ground, which that doesn't make any sense. Star ground is a thing that is your building. So, it's not in the product. So
I cannot go to Monoprice's website.
Yes.
And read any copy, and then my copy, I mean just the description of any one of their products.
Okay.
And see how long it is.
Right.
Okay. That is a product that was built to do the thing. And that is it.
With engineering
so
behind
you know how long that is. That's how long something needs to be to describe a thing that is doing a thing.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a very complex product like an AV receiver or something like that, yes, it will have a lot more words.
There's a lot of features in there, sure.
But many times, what the high end, the audiophile grade crap, they just kill you with words.
Yeah.
They're like, they give you so many words that you're like, something in here must be true.
Something's going to click. I've heard that word somewhere.
And I don't know what it is, but I'm pretty sure that, that if some of it's true, maybe all of it's true. Or maybe they're exaggerating a little bit, but this can't be all lies. Is what you think.
Actually, the more it is, the more likely it is to be all. Well, one of the products, not the one I show, but one of them had a mention of the entire PCB being coated in silver. I'm like, why would I want that? I just want a massive short circuit?
I know, it just short circuits the entire thing.
It's just, it just gets worse and worse the more you read it. So, I don't know. I mean, look, there's absolutely no reason to buy these products over something tried, true, and tested that we know works, like an APC product or a Panamax product. You know, like just get something that is reasonably priced and we know is engineered well and has all the proper certifications. I'm not going to say whether IsoTek...
I don't know how much they're charging, but I'll tell you what, that ISO Gear one that I have is probably less.
Sure.
Okay,
yeah.
and it will definitely do a lot more.
Yes, but
so get that.
I don't know if the IsoTek one has all the proper certifications or not. I wasn't going to bother checking because there's absolutely no reason at the price points they're charging to go with something that just wants to hit you over the head with buzzwords and ridiculous claims that make no sense. Interestingly to me, they never make a single claim about it helping your video signal. It's only audio that cleaning your power can possibly help. Yes,
not for video files. Don't be ridiculous.
Ridiculous stuff.
Who owns a TV near speakers?
And why would it be a high frequency, low power signal that might get affected as opposed to a low frequency, high power signal?
That's just dumb. You're dumb for even thinking about it, to be honest with you. I don't think that you're a serious audio person if these are the questions that you're asking.
Yes.
Robert in Sweden. Robert says he is a long-time listener, but this is his first time asking us a question. He would like a pair of Bluetooth headphones for gaming on his computer. He's finding it very difficult to purchase anything I think sounds good. For the moment, he's using HyperX Cloud 2 wireless headset. Sells for $120 to $115 in the US, which has been the least bad of what he's tried so far, but he isn't fully satisfied. Mm-hmm. He's pretty sure he'd prefer open back headphones, but finding open back wireless gaming headsets with a good mic is providing a challenge. Can we help him?
I feel
open back is where it's what's killing you right there, my man. To be honest with you, because I can give you half a dozen good headsets.
Oh, really?
That are out there that are not open back.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I just reviewed something on AV Gadgets. What's it called? And I don't remember what it's called. There's this. Oh my god, dog! Just pick a room.
There is a dog.
Look at me like that.
I can understand the anxious dog.
So I reviewed the blue ones, Soundcore Space Ones.
Oh yes, okay.
Those are ridiculously full featured, and honestly, I've only ever had one product from Soundcore that I've been like, kind of sucks. And these are not them.
Okay.
So the Space Ones they're closed back, but they are over ear. Mm-hmm. They have just about every stupid feature you can think of on these things. I just love them. And I hate saying this because I often deride Andrew for trying to put in every single article he writes, but my wife was like, these are really cheap compared to how nice they are. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I know, I didn't believe how cheap they're, like $99.
Yeah,
they're ridiculous. But I also reviewed the Epos Impact 1000 series. But these are more. If you're like, I just want a really good microphone, like I want the best microphone I can get on a headset. This microphone on and first of all, these things are ridiculously overpriced. I do not recommend these headphones.
Okay,
they are meant for like. Call centers and that sort of thing.
Okay, gotcha.
And they're not that comfortable. I didn't think they were that comfortable. But the microphone is ludicrously good. Like
well,
it is so good.
That didn't seem to be his main criteria that he's looking for. So what was the Anchor one? The Anchor Soundcore?
The Soundcore Space Ones. I'll put the link in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that sounds
black, white, or blue.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like one worth considering. I just want to say I absolutely commiserate. I went down this path as well, trying to find. I wanted headphones that I could use with both my Xbox and my PlayStation. That's what I was looking for. I was like, I would prefer wireless, but it's not completely necessary. And I was like, by the end of it, I was like, so essentially. What the case is anything that says gaming on it, anything that is marketed at gamers is terrible. Like
they're terrible.
I don't know what, even from companies that make other good headphones, when it came to their like gaming specific brand, the sound quality was awful. And you know what? I kind of agree with you. The HyperXs out of everything was one of the least bad. It was one of the ones where I was like, maybe I'll keep these because they're pretty affordable relative to a lot of the other ones. And they don't sound atrocious, but I wasn't happy with them either. So I am right here with you, Robert. I know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm going to start on the polar opposite end of the scale that Tom was just talking about price-wise and just mention that over at Audyssey, which we know from last week has now been purchased by Sony. So, but the headphone company Audyssey, they have their Maxwell wireless gaming headset. This is planar magnetic. It is closed back, but the sound quality on this is pretty top tier as far as being neutral, having nice extended deep bass, and the microphone quality is good too, and rock solid Bluetooth connection if that's what you're using. And then they have both a PlayStation version and an Xbox version, because of course the wireless protocols between the two things are not compatible, but it does have a 3.5 millimeter jack. So I usually err on the side of getting the PlayStation version and then just using the wire to plug it into my Xbox controller, because that works pretty well, just using the Xbox headset controller. Plus the PlayStation version is $300 in the US versus $330 for the Xbox specific version. But yeah, I mean, if you want really top flight sound quality, I can vouch for those. They sound really, really nice, but of course they are expensive. So a little more reasonable, Astro Gaming's A30s, which are going for $180 right now. That's, not outlandish in terms of the price point you were already looking at. I'm not sure how much they're going to cost where you're living, but at least as far as US pricing goes. Again, nice compatibility across everything. They have the little USB dongle for their own 2.4 gigahertz wireless signal so that you have nice low latency for the gaming, but then it also has Bluetooth built in, so you can use it that way or pair it with your phone and use it with both things at the same time. The only thing I'll say about the A30, closed back again. These ones, they aren't open back like you were looking for, but I don't think they're the most comfortable to wear. The head strap, the design that they went for this, actually puts the head strap like further forward, closer to your forehead than most head straps. I'm not entirely sure why they did that. I don't know if it was like because a lot of gamers wear hats while they're gaming, and I don't know if it was partly to do with that, so that it wasn't like on the crown of your head where sometimes your beanie seams are sitting, so they moved the head strap further forward. But I didn't find it the most comfortable to wear. But sound quality wise, they're pretty darn decent. The price is right. These connection quality is good. So Astro's A30s are something that I certainly don't mind recommending. Now, the ones that I ended up going with were a combination between Drop and Sennheiser, or Sennheiser has now rebranded their gaming thing EPOS. So Tom talked about the EPOS ones that were like for a call center, but these are a gaming headset that's a combination between Drop and EPOS. So it's the PC38X. Now, these are wired only. They are not wireless, but they do come with a short 3.5 millimeter cable that you could plug into your Bluetooth adapter of choice. So given that they're $140 in the US, they're a pretty reasonable price. Now, these are open back. These sound like Sennheiser's hi-fi open back headphones that I like very much. They have the same comfort as those types of headphones. I can wear them for hours and hours and hours and not feel the least bit uncomfortable. So comfort-wise, sound quality-wise, I will absolutely stand behind the PC38X. I will mention that they kind of designed them so that they basically have no protection on the drivers, so it is possible to overdrive these or have them distort, particularly in the low bass if you turn the volume up. So you might want to be a little bit judicious with your volume dial. I have been able to bottom out the PC38Xs. It is possible to do that with these, so a word of warning there. But yeah, as far as sound quality and comfort and open backness and the price being quite reasonable, it's just that they're not wireless, so you'd connect their cable to whatever wireless adapter of your choice if you want to go that way.
Right. So the sound cores you can go wired. I don't know that the microphone is particularly good or bad. I'll be honest with you. If I don't know what kind of gaming you're doing, if you're sitting in a couch or something like that, but I am of the opinion that we need to stop looking for good mics and headphones. Like just full stop. I don't think that that's how we need to do. I
mean, all the ones I mentioned are perfectly fine for your chat. There's not going to be any problem there.
Well, I don't think any of them are that bad for chat. I mean,
some of them are bad.
There are some of the gaming specific ones are, I think. But I think anything that was meant to like make phone calls with, they're going to be fine. And but then again, haven't done a ton of gaming lately, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Frank from Germany, with the release of Audyssey's Multi-Q X version 1.5 software, representatives from Audyssey did some interviews and tutorials, and they talked about some of the limitations that have been removed in version 1.5, but they're still present in the Audyssey Editor app. So it was mentioned that the Editor app won't let you boost more than 9 dB when you are manually adjusting a target curve. What would be the real world consequences of boosting the EQ at certain frequencies more than 9 dB? I don't know why you would want to boost more than 9 dB.
Well, for the people who think that the high upper end of the Harman target curve is what they want to go for, so down at 20 decibels, they're trying to boost at 17, or at 20 hertz, they're trying to boost at 17 dB.
So, the thing that kills me is like, even if you wanted to boost at let's say you wanted to boost at 17 dB, and you're like, oh, I can't do it. It won't let me do it, right? Yeah. Well, all you got to do is remember that you can also cut. You know what I mean? So you've got 9 dB on one side and 9 dB on the other side. You add them together, you got 18 dB, right? So you just cut everything else down to as low as it'll go, and then you boost the other side as high as it'll go. You're now at 17, 18 dB.
Sure.
So I mean, it's stupid. It is stupid, but when you are EQing for flat most of the time, you are never boosting. You're never supposed to really boost. You might. The EQ itself, might boost a little bit here or there.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, you're cutting. You're supposed to be cutting everything down to the lowest level. So if they were to say, that we remove the limitations where you can only cut 9 dB, I'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But again, you could actually kind of get around that by boosting everything up and then the other ones.
Yeah. No, you know what? I think I actually prefer there being a limit on how much you can boost.
I feel like this is this gives uninformed users the power to break their subwoofers.
Well, and that's largely what the people who are paying for the PC software want. They don't limit me. If I'm going to break it, let me break it.
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. I really don't mind there being a limit. So yeah, I mean, like we talked about, we don't really agree with trying to use the Harman room speaker curve as a target because it was meant to be descriptive, not prescriptive. And yeah, the idea that you're going to have sort of it's not unlimited boost on multi-QX, but just not having the 9 decibel boost limit anymore. I actually kind of think it's good to have that limitation in there. Exactly like Tom said, if you want to apply more EQ, apply more cutting as opposed to just trying to get that boost to be unlimited. So yeah, I mean the real world consequences are you might have to fiddle with it more, but ultimately maybe it should be a clue to you that I don't think you should be boosting stuff that much. It's I mean that you're just talking
think
about
you're doing something wrong.
Well, yeah, and you're just talking about gain boost. There is a limit to the amplifier power that can come out in response. Like if you start sending out a 4-volt signal from your pre-outs, you're not doing yourself any favors. You're just starting to clip the abilities of whatever amplifier you've connected it to. Like, yes, your amplifier should clip before your preamplifier. You don't want your preamplifier clipping its signal before you've reached the limits of your amplifier. It should be the amplifier that reaches its limits before the pre-out signal. But you don't want to boost the pre-out signal so much that you are like guaranteed to drive your amplifier into clipping. That's not like a great goal to be aiming for. So I don't want like unlimited preamplifier gain. It doesn't really make sense to me to have no limitation on there.
Yeah, I agree. The main limitation that version 1.5 is removed is the auto leveling that Audyssey uses to level the gain of the subwoofer output referenced to 80 Hz with the gain of the main speaker outputs referenced to 1 kHz. Frank has heard it explained that if you draw a new target curve with a significant bass boost, that auto leveling function can result in you actually hearing less bass instead of more. So can we explain the benefits of being able to disable that auto leveling using multi-QX version 1.5 and the drawbacks of not being able to disable it via the Audyssey editor app? I have not heard this, so I'm going to listen to Rob and be informed just like that.
So I mean, this is the thing where, like what Tom just talked about, let's say you are still working within the I can only boost it +9, and I want to have a 17 or 18 dB boost down at 20 Hertz, but that means that by the time I get to 80 Hertz, I still have a significant boost. I still have a 10 decibel boost or something at 80 Hertz. So I go ahead and I draw my target curve, and maybe I even cut down the higher frequencies so that the difference between the higher frequencies and 80 Hertz is going to be, like 10 dB or something like that, or more perhaps. Well, when you if you do that in the Audyssey editor app, and then you attempt to apply that, it still overrides everything and says 1 kilohertz and 80 hertz should be the same level. So I'm just gonna go in there and either boost up, like it brings everything back to nominal value, zero value, instead of cutting it all down in the mid-range and treble, and then it just goes ahead and lowers the bass, which might result in a dip between 80 hertz and say like 120, 160 hertz, because now it's like, okay, 1 kilohertz and 80 hertz should be equal. That's it, like overrides that with the auto leveling. So if you've drawn this curve, this rising curve in the bass, you can end up with like the bass above 80 hertz now being below the level of 80 hertz and 1 kilohertz, depending on what the shape of the target curve is that you drew. So that's where you can end. So look, the thing is, the bass between 80 hertz and 500 hertz is much more audible and noticeable to us than the bass below 80 hertz. So if you end up with it lowering 80 hertz and as a result, because of the target curve you drew, also lowering the bass between, let's say, 800 or 80 and 300 hertz or something like that, you are really going to notice that you are missing bass, and that's what is being talked about here. So for the people who are drawing aggressive boosting target curves in their bass and they don't want to run into that issue, you can turn off that auto leveling in the desktop version, the MultiQ X software, and it'll just be like, okay, whatever target curve you drew, I'm just going to go ahead and do my best to follow that. So for the people who are doing that, it's the benefit there. For if you're using the MultiQ editor app, just have a target curve that's not quite so aggressive, and you won't run into this as an issue.
Can you imagine what it's like being at one of these companies? Like, yeah, and I'm talking about receiver manufacturers, being an engineer at Audyssey, at Drac, at a bunch of these other companies that are like, the customer, the marketing guys come in and say, or gals come in and say, the customers are asking us for this, and every engineer goes, that's dumb. They shouldn't be able to do that because it's dangerous and they're going to break something. They're like, yeah, but they want it. Can we do it? Well, technically we can do it, but it's not something that people should ever want to do. The fact that they want to do it indicates that they don't know what they're doing, so they shouldn't be able to do it. And the marketing people go, all I heard was yes. We can do it.
That's right.
So do it. And they walk out of the room, and the engineers are just like, all right, who wants to do some shots? And that's like, let's get drunk and make bad decisions, and we're going to turn that into our next product release. I believe that that's what happens many times at these companies where they're like, well, they want to be able to do this, so
they're giving the people what they want. I mean, look, the number of people paying the $200 to get the MultiQ X software is pretty darn low. It is a niche of a niche within the home theater crowd that's going ahead and doing it. So they're just like, look, if you guys want it, we're going to give it to you, because what is the point of fighting this tiny little crowd of people who's actually willing to buy this software?
It's very, very dumb. David is currently living on a U.S. military base in Japan. It's been a wonderful place to live, especially for someone who loves AV gear and has audiophile leanings. Uh-oh. We've got a power conditioner for you. It has a lot of words.
I don't think it's expensive enough.
It might not be. It seems as though brick-and-mortar stores that focus on speakers and audio equipment are disappearing across the U.S., but in Japan, they have recycle stores that stock oodles of audio gear. He shared several pictures from a recent visit. If you want to see them, youtube.com/AVRant. I think
that's it. It's the short one.
Or our Flickr album. So there's a bunch of pictures.
There are many speakers on many shelves.
Speakers that some of which I recognize, some of which I don't. I see the Kef ones are there pretty obviously.
These are like disc players predominantly, it looks like, on this shelf.
Some
pretty beefy disc players going on there. More speakers, and then just some of the prices, of course, in yen, so do your conversion.
Dolly, Focal, ELAC, JBL.
That's right.
For speakers wise, that one they can't read.
I do like something when a price tag has $1 million on it, but that's $1 million yen, so it's not quite the same thing.
1.76 million.
That's right.
2011 it says. Whatever. Oh, there's some outlets. I don't know why that's on there.
I don't
know. Anyways, it's Yamaha, 44,000 yen. I don't know if that's good or not. I don't understand why there's a lower price underneath it and smaller.
I don't know either.
All right, I don't read Japanese or whatever, so here we go. But one type of item he hasn't found a lot of in Japan are powerful subwoofers. His on-base housing is about 1,100 square feet, and everything is open. Yeah, 1,100 square feet. You could still fill that bad boy. So while his theater area is 15 by 15 with the back open to the dining area and kitchen, it's basically an entire first floor as far as the base would be concerned. He brought his pair of SVS PB1000 subs with him when they moved, but due to floor space limitations, he's only using one of them while the other is in storage. He has noticed he is able to localize the single sub, particularly when listening to music. His only option for using both of his PB1000 subs would be putting them on either side of his TV stand at the front, so he's sure that would actually help all that much. Where's the other one? Oh, where is it? I don't see it.
The other one is in
storage.
storage.
I see it. It's in front of this. Yeah. I meant the other one. So it's in front of and slightly to the left of his front left speaker.
That's
so
correct.
It's against the wall, basically. Yeah. And he's got tri-traps in the corner, 4 of which are in my garage sopping wet as we speak. Yeah. What his wife would really prefer would be to downsize and take up a lot less floor space. He contacted the SVS, and they confirmed they could ship to his address, and after he described the situation, they suggested go with a pair of PC2000s or PC2000 Pro cylinder subs, but if those wouldn't work for him, he could go for a pair of SB2000 or a pair of Micro 3000s. Or 3000 Micro, sorry. What do we think would be his best choice? Is there a large difference between the 2000 Pro and the non-Pro models? No.
I mean, there's the app, right?
There's the
app functionality. That is a cut and dry difference between the Pro models have the app and the non-Pro models don't. In out-and-out performance, the Pro models did get a little bit more powerful. It's not that there's zero, but I would not qualify it as a large difference. A small difference is definitely what I would call it. They did also do a little bit of tuning on the DSPs where the Pro models tend to remain a little bit flatter, a little bit lower. Some of that is just boosting the output at the bottom. So it's not that the headroom really grew that much. It's that they DSP tuned it to keep it a little bit flatter, a little bit lower. So there are some changes, things that by default you very well might be able to hear, but I would not qualify any of it as a large difference.
I'll be honest with you. With the localizing of the sub, I want to address that, but let's continue on with this first. He says, would there be a difference between the Pro and non-Pro models that they have on sale for Labor Day? And does it even make sense to get a pair since you won't have optimal placement no matter what he goes with? Well, so the second part of that question is it makes sense to go with a pair since you won't have optimal placement. You are on the military base in Japan. My guess is that you're not planning on living here forever.
Well, that's coming up in his second question. Yes.
So the answer to your question, at least for the second part, is does it make sense to go with a pair since you won't have optimal placement? Well, if your problem is localization, then it makes sense to go with a pair because it'll help you with the localization, which is the problem that you're having. But the real issue comes into what do you buy? And that's because you will not know where you end up. You come back in the States, 1,100 square feet. That might just be a room in your house, not the entire house.
I guess, yeah.
You know what I mean?
But you might end up with feet, right? So we are talking 9,000-ish cubic feet by the time it's the whole first floor.
So, it's a tough thing. If it were me, I would experiment because you keep telling me that you can only place that sub in one place. I see 3 places for that sub right now. So in this picture, I actually see 4 if that chair can be moved forward a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you love those Git tri-traps where they are, but there's maybe some more places depending on how you want to move those things around. So I don't necessarily agree that you need to buy something else right now. I think that you could, in theory, live with what you have, the single sub. And then when you move to your forever home or more forever than you're at right now, then you can start talking about changing subs.
I mean, also, he does already own and have in storage a second PB1000. And look, yes, I'm always going to say if you have the ability, I would have the 2 subs across the room from each other. But the notion of putting the 2 PB1000s on either side of your TV stand, where it does look like you have spaces where they could go and would not look out of place, that isn't necessarily a bad choice because they effectively work like one sub in the middle of the front wall at that point. That they're essentially co-located, even though it looks like they're separated by 5.5 feet or whatever it is. In terms of bass frequencies, they're essentially co-located very much like a single subwoofer in the middle of your front wall, which as far as placement for a single subwoofer goes, tends to be one of the better choices, is centering it right on your front wall if you only have a single sub. So before you go and buy and spend the considerable amount to import subwoofers from SVS to Japan where you are, given that you already own two, I would go ahead and try them positioned exactly like you suggest on either side of the TV stand. Output-wise, I would want the ported models, like for 1,100 square feet, approaching 9,000 cubic feet, I would want the ability to have the higher output. I would very much like SVS said to you, I would put the 3000 micro at the very bottom. There are limitations when you make subwoofers that physically tiny. They just cannot get super loud and super low. They're remarkable for what they do, but they wouldn't be my choice for this size of open room. The SB2000s would be a compromise, right? They will not get loud and low enough to pressurize the space. You don't really want that anyway. He mentioned in his email he doesn't really want that, but they'd be the compromise in between. So if I had my druthers, would I have a pair of PC2000 cylinders in here? Sure, I would.
Sure.
And look, footprint-wise, they are smaller. They're smaller than your PP1000 footprint-wise. But if we're talking about, do they visually disappear? Well, I mean, they're like little water heaters. They give up height to give you the smaller footprint. But that said, you can lay them on their side. Sometimes they tuck behind a chair if you lay them on their side that way. So just sheer output and extension wise, PC2000 cylinders would be my choice. But I think with a pair of PP1000s already on hand that you don't have to spend additional money for, I would absolutely experiment with them and see if you can get better results that way. So the only other thing I'll mention is before you go and purchase anything, if you pull up SVS's website on your phone, they have their augmented reality little thing that you can go to the product page of any of these and they'll do a little augmented reality thing using the camera on your phone is it perfect? No, but it gives you a pretty decent idea of how any of their subwoofers would physically look in your room. So that's another way you could see if the cylinder might be whatsoever acceptable in your room somewhere. So those would be all the points I would want to make.
I don't like the idea of doing anything permanent here and buying anything whatsoever.
PP1000s are a pretty decent choice for what you've got here. So I would go ahead and put them on either side of your TV stand and see how that goes.
His other concern is that he won't necessarily always be living on base. In Japan, on base, the outlets are 120/50, 120 volts, 50 hertz. But elsewhere in Japan, the outlets can vary from 100 volts with 50 hertz to 100 volts, 60 hertz, or some that are 120, 60. Most are two-prong. Does he need to be concerned when importing subwoofers from SVS in the U.S.? And what about when he potentially when potentially buying gear from some of these recycle stores? With a source device, AV receiver or amplifier, potentially have trouble with the varying electrical outlets and standards. So obviously, I can speak to this since I moved to Australia, where the voltage was different. Subwoofers in particular are usually fairly agnostic when it comes to power. There may be a switch on the back. You may have to flip a few, like a fuse thingy you take out and you turn it around and you put it back in.
Or a dip switch sometimes.
Yeah.
The good news is in Japan, if it's 100, 110, or 120, that doesn't typically pose any problem. It's when you switch from the 100-ish to the 220 volt. That's a big problem. But the 100, 110, 120 are pretty much all interchangeable. The frequency being either 50 hertz or 60 hertz, that can cause issues for sure. That can sometimes cause noticeable flickering or audible bumps in things. But that said, in Japan, they definitely have converters available. There is no question that there are available converters between the 50 and the 60 hertz. So the SVS power supplies are pretty universal. If you do end up purchasing something, then of course you could ask them before they ship it over. But you've been using your PV1000, so you know that it already works where you are, and that's fine. And there's not going to be an issue between the 100 volt, 110, and 120. But the 50 to 60, you might need a converter, but they absolutely have those available in Japan.
Your more sensitive electronics like receivers and stuff like that are definitely going to be more. They're going to be designed with a specific power in mind. So you just have to be really careful with them. With subwoofers, and generally speaking, and most amplifiers for that matter, can be used anywhere. You just have to read up on it, and see what you have to do. So it should be fine. You just have to be a little careful. Of course, things like speakers, passive things, I don't care.
No, it's usually when you go to countries that use the 200, 220, 240 volt, that's where you definitely need to have a full-on transformer converter.
Yeah, which is what I had when I went to Australia.
Yeah.
And it worked fine. It worked fine. I just had to make sure I had a big enough one, and they are
That's
big
right.
and heavy. Where are we at time-wise on this thing? Okay. Brandon's TV, a bedroom TV, died. He measured, and the largest screen that could fit would be 48-inch with thin bezels. LG's A2 OLED would fit, and it's on sale for a considerably lower price than the C3 series. The C2 series seems to be all sold out now. The 48-inch A2 is $650. He might play some games on it from time to time, but nothing serious. Should he get it, or is there something else we'd recommend much more highly? I just wrote an article about this. So the idea, the question here is, I'm not going to use something very often. Do I need to get a really good thing for the thing I'm not going to use very often? And my answer to that question is, what is your threshold of quality? Because what will happen is, say you're like, oh, I have a TV, I have a bedroom, I need to buy a TV for it. You go out there, you buy the cheapest TV you can find, right? And you're like, I don't care, I'm never going to use that TV. And then you do, for whatever reason. Like, oh, I'm going to change this room into my office. I'm going to change this room into a hobby room for my wife. And I'm going to hang out in there sometimes too, and I'll just play video games on it. All of a sudden, you're using this TV. Or, worst case scenario, your other TV breaks and you have to send it in for repair, and now you're stuck with this terrible TV as your only backup sort of thing that you move to your home theater. It's not that you need to buy the highest quality, the biggest picture, all that other stuff. What you do need to do is get something that you're not going to hate if you have to use it. And, I don't know what quality the A2 falls into this range, but the idea here is that you just, you're not necessarily needing to get like, I want to have a cinematic experience in my bedroom, but you do want to have an experience that's not like, these people are not from planet Earth because they aren't the right color. You know what I mean?
Well, let's be clear here. The A2 is an OLED. So it looks fantastic. It looks better than any other 43 or 50-inch TV, bar the even more expensive options that are out there. So, basically, what are you giving up, quote unquote, by going with the A2 series? Well, it's a 60 hertz TV instead of 120. So if you are inputting a 60 hertz signal from your cable box or from a streaming device or from a video game system, then it is going to play back 60 hertz at 60 hertz, judder and all. That is going to happen on the A2. It does have a 72 hertz mode if you feed it a 24 hertz signal. So like if you have a disc player or you use a streaming box that outputs 24 hertz when that's the source material, it will remove the judder. It'll show it at 72 hertz instead of 60. So you can still see stuff judder free. It's just that if you're trying to do, particularly like from a cable box, that's the main source that I'm thinking of that is almost always locked to 60 hertz, but it was originally shot at 24. It doesn't do the inverse 3-2 pull down like the 120 hertz OLEDs do. But that's basically the main drawback as far as video quality goes. The A2 series also is not as bright. It tops out at about 550 nits. It doesn't get up to the 800 to 1000 nits that the C series does. So that's what the limitations are. That's what you're giving up by going to the A2 series. So, I mean, it's several $100. I think it's like close to $600 to get the 48-inch C3. So it's basically twice the price. Do you really need the 120 hertz support? Do you really need the greater brightness? I can only let you decide that. Compared to all the alternatives that are out there, like honestly, once you go below 55 inches, a lot of the TV brands like skimp a lot on their smaller screen sizes. Samsung has some pretty decent offerings, particularly at the 43 and 50 inch sizes, but they're generally, for the ones that I think are like look good, more expensive than the A2. So in terms of just out and out, like how beautiful does it look? It's still an OLED. It's still the best black levels. It's still the best contrast. The color is still accurate. So it's still a really good looking TV. So I would basically say, as long as you're fine with topping out at 60 hertz, as long as you're fine with your cable box maybe having judder, as long as you're fine with it not being the brightest TV ever, I think the A2 is a good buy at $650.
He's also in the bedroom. He's got a Denon AVR 2309 CI receiver with a 5.2 speaker system. His main source is a Roku stick, and he's got some classic game systems in there that don't get used very often. The newest is a PS3. Would he need to plug sources directly into the new TV? And if so, how should he handle the audio signal? The 2309 is old enough that it doesn't even have HDMI ARC. So we just use an optical audio connection. Would it make any difference with a speaker topping out at 5.2? Yeah, so the PS3 was HDMI.
But topped out at 1080, right? PS3 did not go up to 4K.
Right. So I mean, the thing about connecting everything to your TV, you send it back via optical, usually, which will be fine. It just won't be lossless. It'll be some sort of lossy codec, which honestly, it's a bedroom. That's fine.
Yeah.
I would be okay with doing it that way. I mean, you could always get some sort of HDMI converter, but I feel like that's overkill. I think you just...
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, with any of the systems that you talked about, like, unless you have a 4K signal, right? A 4K signal is not something your 2309 can pass through. Everything up to 1080p, it can pass through. So there isn't really much need to change anything. You can still have all of your sources plugged into your 2309 and let it feed the...
As long as they have an output for it. I mean, I don't know that PS3 can even do non-HDMI, because he said the 23... Oh, it has an HDMI, but not ARC. Okay.
Yeah, not ARC
just plug everything
and
into
not 4K.
To the receiver,
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is, if you get something like, let's say you're hooking up an Apple TV or an NVIDIA Shield or something like that that's going to be feeding streaming video sources at 4K with HDR, those you would want to plug directly into the television. Or if you bring a PS5 or an Xbox Series X in here, you're going to want to plug that directly into the TV so you can get the 4K and the HDR. And then, it's just going to be an optical audio connection going back downstream to your 2309. And since your audio system tops out at 5.2 anyway, I'm really not concerned about that. That's perfectly reasonable, especially for a bedroom system.
But that Roku stick, does that do 4K? It might do 4K, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are 1080 Roku sticks and there are 4K Roku sticks. Yeah. So it's very possible the Roku stick you'd want to plug directly in the TV if it's a 4K one. Like that's basically the cutoff. Anything that's 4K or HDR, that you want to plug directly into the TV. Yeah. But all your old gaming systems, if a PS3 is the newest that you have, they don't need to plug directly into the TV. They can all plug into your existing AV receiver. It's totally fine for that.
So if he were to get a new AV receiver, again, not going any higher than 5.2 speaker setup, what we'd recommend.
Now, this is tricky because the A2 only has HDMI video inputs. It does not have a composite or a component video input. So you couldn't take your old Nintendo or your Wii or something like that and plug it straight into the TV. It doesn't have any analog video in. And most AVRs these days, most receivers these days aren't doing analog video to HDMI conversion anymore. You kind of got to look specifically at that. So like I was looking over at Accessories for Less and I had to get up to the $600 plus models to find ones that were doing analog video to to HDMI conversion. A lot of them, even if they still had like a composite or a component video input, they weren't converting that analog video to HDMI on anything less expensive. And that's at Accessories for Less. Those are refurbished models and sometimes a little bit older models. And I had to get up to $600 plus to find some Yamaha models that finally were doing the analog video to HDMI conversion at that point. So you got to be a little bit careful with that. You'd want to make sure that analog video to HDMI conversion is actually supported because you're going to need to rely on your AV receiver to do that unless you want to go get RetroTink or something like that that's going to convert your analog video old gaming systems to HDMI for output.
Yes, could we explain how time delay applies to subwoofers? You've been seeing some forum posts that seem to preach this as a holy grail of subwoofer. I wrote an article about this. It's what is it called? It's a time alignment, right? For your subwoofers. Yeah. And we have talked about this a number of times. The idea here is, at least from the perspective of the people online, is they think that if your if the waveform that comes from your subwoofer arrives at a different time than the waveform from the speaker itself, that in the where the things are crossing over, they will cancel out instead of mesh together properly, and you'll have weird cancellations. Now, none of these people seem to understand that you do not experience direct sound from subwoofers anyways. Okay. And
you're only ever listening to one cycle of a sine wave.
Right. Yeah. So they also, I mean, your AV receiver is also already quote unquote time aligning your subwoofer output to a certain extent because that's what the distance is. That's what the distance does. So, yes, they love talking about this. We've actually had one listener on our podcast who had five subs in his system, I think.
5, yes. Yeah.
And he went through and meticulously time aligned all the subs.
Yeah.
And and I don't think he did it to the speakers. I think he just did it to each other. And then listened and went, well, that sounds worse. And
worse than just sending a mono signal to all 5
right.
subs. Yeah.
And I mean, that's just an N of 1, so it's not that big of a deal. But most of the data and the research and stuff is either this will do very little to nothing, and it could actually do something bad if you actually succeeded in time aligning all the subs to your off center within your room seat,
right?
To each other. It's just it's gatekeeping, is what it is. In my mind,
it's getting excited about an idea, but
it's gatekeeping. It's if you're not doing this, you're not cool. You're not one of you're not serious about this. There's a lot of ways to gatekeep in a hobby, and to me, this is a big one. This is when people say, "Oh, if you don't have the big ceramic cog thing in your rear derailleur on your bike, you're not serious about cycling." I'm like, that's a $2,000 product that you want me to put on a $2,000 bike. That's ludicrous. I'm not doing that. That's silly. And this is the same sort of thing. This is like, if you're not time aligning your subs, then you're not serious about sound.
Now,
I don't think it's the case.
That all said, there is something to be said for when we're just talking about setting up just dual subwoofers, the notion of adjusting the phase, or it could be the delay, because delay and phase have effectively the same impact on the output signal. They aren't literally the same thing, but effectively you end up reaching the same result by adjusting the phase or adjusting the delay of one subwoofer relative to the other. Now, that's when we're talking about standing wave issues, right? So that is not a direct sound meeting up with the same direct sound from another source. This is, we're in a room, we have standing waves going on, and we're going to start adjusting the relative delay or the relative phase between those two sources of the standing wave to ameliorate the standing wave. That there is something to that. Now, look, there is nothing to that besides trial and error. Whether you're doing it by ear or whether you're doing it by looking at graphs, it still ends up being trial and error. That's really the only way that you effectively do this. Now, you can take that a step further and say, okay, at the crossover frequency of 80 hertz or 90 hertz, it is possible that I have a standing wave that is being generated by the speakers and by the subwoofers. So at that point, you could say, okay, well, I've got the dual subs or the quad subs. They're working together now. Now I'm going to add in the sound from the speakers, and I'm going to do the same process again. It's just that I'm going to adjust the relative phase of my group of subwoofers rather than one at a time. I'm going to now adjust the group of subwoofers, which might be most easily accomplished by adjusting the distance setting in your AV receiver for your lone subwoofer output that you're using. That very well might be the easiest way to do that, because now you're adjusting all of the subwoofers being fed off of that one subwoofer output as a group. So there is still something to that. It's specifically to deal with
That's not what
waves.
they're talking about, though.
I know. I'm just saying, on the flip side of it, where could this have a genuine impact? There is that side of it where you're adjusting the relative phase or the relative delays between things that are producing standing waves in your room.
Right. Yeah, which we have talked about when in Rob's 12-step
That's right.
setup, we talk about that. He has heard us say that dual subwoofers do not necessarily need to be literally identical. Even mixing ported and sealed can work as long as they're similar capabilities, right?
Yes. And I will say, you will often find that means an exceedingly powerful relative to other sealed subwoofer mixed with a not necessarily that expensive ported subwoofer. Because to get similar output and extension between sealed and ported can be quite a vast difference in price.
But what about having different response times of the two drivers? Is there what? Is there a risk of cancellations due to one of the subwoofers having a faster response time than the other? You saw a YouTube video claiming that even the difference between two generations of SVS subs, like the PB2000 and the PB2000 Pro, could potentially be an issue because of the difference in driver timing. Anything to that? Absolutely not. That is garbage. That is straight up, I made this crap up.
I mean, I suppose if you have a really bad ported sub with horrible group delay.
That's different. That's not what he's talking about.
I mean, that's a problem anyway. That's just that's
just a
problem.
bad sub. Yeah.
That's just a problem.
The idea, what they're saying here, and this is where it comes from. Okay, sealed subwoofers, right? There is no, the air does not move in and out of the subwoofer at all. Yeah. So when the driver pulls out,
the air is
or pushes
as a
out,
spring.
It gets sucked back in by the vacuum it creates. So the lower air pressure behind, and when it pulls in to create the other half of the wave, the air is compressed behind it and wants to push it back out. Okay, so this is where this whole sealed subs are faster than ported subs nonsense comes from.
That's where it comes from. All right.
So therefore, that driver must be faster because it's getting help. Okay, it's getting help. Not that the ported subwoofer doesn't get that help, so that it's going to be slower. Therefore, it's going to shut up.
Yeah, no, this one's nonsense. Like, if you have a subwoofer whose response is slow enough that it's a problem when it's mated to a subwoofer that's faster, that subwoofer was a problem anyway, full stop, whether it was mated to anything else or not.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think of it this way, the driver is going in and out of at the frequency, and the speed, which is what frequency is, the speed of the wave that it is creating. Okay, it doesn't make any difference if there's air behind it, or or a vacuum behind it, or whatever that's assisting this. All that's doing is meaning that the amplifier has to be more powerful to make sure that the driver is moving at the correct speed. If it's going faster, it's a bad sub. You've created a bad sub that's no longer creating the sound that it's supposed to. Also, it's slower or faster. I mean, I don't know which one it is. It doesn't make any difference. Lastly, it says, not lastly, he's got two more. Does it make any? Does it matter which direction the subwoofer drivers face? How could it if bass is omnidirectional? Generally speaking, no. You can just go ahead and throw it.
For the most part, I mean, this is. Like, so you know how you have many subwoofers have that polarity switch on the back, the 0-180 polarity switch. So imagine you had two identical subwoofers, both of them with their polarity switches set to 0, and then you literally just rotated one 180 degrees and faced it the other way. That would be the same as flicking the 0-180 polarity switch. Now, when one of those subwoofer drivers is pushing out, like coming towards you, the other one is pushing out away from you, which is exactly the same as being 180 degrees out of phase or a 180 polarity switch having been flicked. So can the direction of the drivers have some difference? Yes, it can, because I mean, you are physically altering the phase relationship between those two drivers. They aren't necessarily pushing out and pulling in exactly together anymore. You have physically altered the phase. If you have variable phase, you can just adjust that until they're back in sync again, or whatever relative difference between them that works best in your room. So is it a matter of, if I turn my subwoofer around, it's impossible for me to get it back where it needs to be? No, you can get it back where it needs to be by adjusting the phase.
Your AV receiver, if it's noticing cancellations and everything else going on, when it does a room correction, it's going to adjust the distance of one versus the other.
Yes.
And it's going to do the same thing. So
that's right.
That's why I say just throw them up wherever you want, because when you throw your room correction on, it's going to fix.
I mean, I suppose there's a case where you have two subwoofers that don't have fully variable phase, and you're like, well, I'm going to use the physical rotation of the sub to act as my variable phase. I guess you could.
It's so funny. When I do research for my articles, I'll often come across forum posts from integrators and custom installers and stuff like that. And there's this contingent of custom installers who are absolutely of the opinion that you shouldn't be using room correction at all, because you can do it with a tape measure and your ear, or with a microphone and an SPL meter, and that's it. And I'm like, well, that's not really true with subwoofers. You can, and even then, the fur filters that are in the room correction programs are different than the EQ that you have access to in any other program that you would use that would not be automated. So it's not true, but they are absolutely convinced that is the way. So yeah, there's no reason why you can't just face them in the old direction that you want. I mean, you can take a front firing driver, turn that subwoofer so that it's facing directly at the ground. As long as you elevate it enough, so that
give it clearance,
it'll be fine. Because you're right, they are omnidirectional. But like Rob said, there is a phase related issue that could be happening
physically changing the phase relationship.
But what you wouldn't want to do is set up your subs, run your own correction, and then turn one of your subs afterwards. That's where you may run into an issue. But then again, the issue was you did it wrong. And I don't know that that's an issue with facing the subs in a different way. Lastly, he says he'll often see speaker reviews where they say the very best response is achieved with speakers being slightly off axis to the listener. But how can that be accomplished if the speaker is being used as a center speaker? Would you just angle it slightly up or down or a bit off axis that way? I mean, honestly, I just face them directly forward, and most of the times that puts you a little bit off axis to the speaker anyways, the center channel if you're talking about that. And yes, most of the time, I believe on most speaker designs, especially those designed for home theater, the whole idea is that they're really worried about the off-axis response because that's how you encompass a couch.
Yes.
A larger
not everybody
area.
On a couch is going to be able to be bang on axis. That's just physically not possible.
If you are like, apparently it appears that Reddit believes, if you can only get the good sound by facing the speakers directly at your head, they are literally built for one person. Why aren't you wearing headphones? Because that's what they are. You've now got these headphones. So yes, you should be listening off axis. As far as center channels are concerned, most of the time, if you just put them on a stand or put them in the cabinet or on the cabinet or whatever, they aren't going to be directly in line with your face. They aren't.
Well, I mean, I've seen the argument of, to take your exactly where your nose is, if assuming you're sitting in a centered seat, and just have the center speaker 6 inches to the left or right of that, and then you've achieved it.
Yeah.
You can do it if you care about it.
I mean, you could, but I'm not doing that. Yeah. In the end, this is a question that can be answered by you. Once you get your thing set up, for me, I always do the easiest thing possible.
Right.
And I think that center channels are designed to be a little bit more forgiving of being, straight at you too.
But I mean, sometimes people are using 3 identical speakers across the front. Yeah. So.
Karl, Barco sent out a teaser for CETA to say that they'll be showing their new Nerthus projector.
I mean, that's the name. I think it's Nerthus. What a choice for a name, but I don't know. Nerthus.
Whatever. It's being sold by Barco Residential, and they say it meets commercial DCI standards with 32,000 lumens and claim it's the first projector in its category to cover 100% of Rec 2020 color gamut. Does this sound like the pinnacle of home theater projector? Didn't we just have one that does more than Rec 2020 color gamut?
Oh, there was a claim, yes, that it goes beyond Rec 2020. Yes, there's laser light engine for sure.
For the love of God. 32,000 lumens.
Indeed.
How much heat is this thing giving off?
Oh, it needs its own separate room. It needs its own dedicated room, yeah.
Pinnacle. The pinnacle. Can we just stop with the pinnacles of things?
There is never going to be a pinnacle.
There's no pinnacles. There's always another pinnacle just around the corner.
There are already home-related projectors that can do 48,000 lumens, so this can't be the pinnacle. There's something out there with an even higher number. Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh, no, I mean, look,
so bright it could literally blind you.
Yes. Obviously, this is for a very different crowd than what we normally talk to. This is for a much larger screen size.
Well,
and yes,
you just gotta remember these things it's residential. It ain't your residence.
Not
First
mine.
of all.
Definitely not mine.
It is for the residence that's got like a 30 or 50 or 100 seat theater in their house. And they need to light up a 210-inch screen.
It absolutely is a small commercial theater.
It is.
That's just being sold under the residential brand. That's all it is. Yeah. I hope. I don't know. I didn't see the full specs on this. I hope it's the 6-chip DLP, because otherwise we're still limited by the contrast of DLP chips. And unless it's the 6-chip that does 2 DLP chips per red, green, and blue channel to get you the deep Dolby Vision black levels, if it isn't that, it's definitely not the pinnacle. If it's only a 3-chip, then this is definitely not the pinnacle, Karl.
Yeah.
I think we can do Jason's, and that might be about
Jason. Jason reached out to Cable Matters to ask them about the HDBaseT converter that we suggested to potentially replace the one that Jason has that can't seem to work with his Bell fiber cable box. Given the rest of his equipment, Jason would prefer to get an HDBaseT converter that works with Dolby Vision, and the Cable Matters converter does not explicitly mention Dolby Vision on the product page. It does mention HDR. Are there any other HDBaseT converters that he should maybe consider that specifically mention Dolby Vision? I really don't understand why Dolby Vision is so much more difficult than anything else. It's just well, it's just metadata.
I don't know.
I don't understand.
I think there's like 16 different profiles of Dolby Vision at this point, and I don't fully understand why it should really make a difference between what bandwidth is there. But yeah, there do occasionally seem to be issues. So there's this brand Orei, Orei, that is definitely all over Amazon these days, and I don't know. It seems slightly hit or miss as to how utterly reliable it is. I did want to mention that they have specifically one HDBaseT converter system, the EXB400. That is the only one I've seen that explicitly mentioned Dolby Vision and HLG even, because I've seen other ones that mention HDR10 and Dolby Vision, but very few explicitly mention even HLG. This is a newer one from Orei. It's $170, which I think is $50 more than the Cable Matters one that I pointed you to before. But I mean, as far as just explicitly saying that, yeah, it's 18 gigabits per second, it's all the HDR formats that are out there, including Dolby Vision and HLG. This was one that mentioned it. So, yeah, I mean, look, you can buy them on Amazon, which means you can return it quite easily if it doesn't work for you. So it might be worth a try. At least it definitely mentions that HDR format specifically.
I guess the Cable Matters people never got back to him. He said he reached out, but
well, I mean, not yet. I haven't heard from him yet. Yeah.
All right, who we have left?
Okay, on the list, we have Paul. Scrolling down through several questions that Paul asked, and we don't have time for this week. Infinite Gary is on the list there, Greg, and Kieran.
All right, we'll get to you next week. I want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Nelson for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us Cup of Coffee link and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 131 patrons over at patreon.com, including Dale.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for the financial support, Nelson, for your PayPal donation, and patreon.com/AVRant podcast, the place you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation if you'd like to. So big thanks to our 131 patrons over there. And Dale, thank you for being one of them.
So I want to thank those who thanked us, including Dazz, Dale, Eddie, Frank, Greg, David, and Paul. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'll say the names one more time. Dazz, Dale, Eddie, Frank, Greg, David, and Paul. Thank you very much for sending in your notes of gratitude to us. Your notes of encouragement are definitely appreciated. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.